Hello, I'm Daniel, the Armchair Model Railroader, and welcome back to another episode of how I would make a model railroad of Grand Central Terminal. In the previous episode of how I would model Grand Central Terminal, uh, I talked a little bit about the overall look of the entire model railroad, starting from Grand Central Terminal, running through Mott Haven, and eventually through New Rochelle. And in this episode, we're going to look at how I would model the lower suburban level of Grand Central Terminal. Uh, when I made this drawing, I had the access point to the model over here in this area on this curve. And since this is the lower level, uh, it wasn't quite matching up with the upper level. And instead of doing the entire yard inside of the terminal, I decided that since it would be impossible, especially in basically any gauge, to reach from track 200 all the way over to track 125, if this were up against a wall like I had it in the plan, then accessing any of the tracks in between, like I said, it goes from 200 here all the way over to 125 here. Down here is 127, 126. These tracks over here would be a little bit easier. You'd be able to reach it from both sides with relative ease. But anything over here in the main body of the yard would be nearly unaccessible. In fact, most of this yard would probably, for operation's sake, you wouldn't be able to model most of this unless it was all static, which is what I plan to make it all static and just be a very detailed display of what Grand Central Terminal looks like underground, showing the supports that hold up the streets and the structures above it, mainly the General Building and the Pan Am Building. But actually, the Pan Am Building nor the General Building were there in 1927, or 1926 rather, when that's the era that I was looking to model. This track as it is here isn't merely a representation of what it's like. There's actually a ladder that runs from J track here, basically across this area here. And all of these tracks in here are storage. All the tracks from here over to here and across down to there inside this block are all storage tracks. There is an outer loop coming from where trains would. This was in the original design, this was to be the arrivals platforms over here. And there was not 6 of them or 5 of them even. There was probably only 4 arrival tracks over here in this area, and they went around to this point here. This loop of track right here is called the outer large loop, and then this track right in here is called the inner, the smaller inner loop. As far as I know, on the lower suburban level right now, the loop only goes from about right here to right about here, and then it dead ends. It doesn't continue on into here. Most of these tracks down here are not being used right now. Everything from about right here over to here are not used because I believe the East Side Access Project made that that was where the access was to the Madison terminal below Grand Central Terminal, where the Long Island Railroad now comes in. As far as I know, 117 is the last track that's used now, currently. I might be wrong about that. It might still exist beyond that point. The tunnels might be in there. I don't really know for certain. It's not publicly available knowledge. Inside the terminal itself, when I look at pictures of it online, track 117 is the furthest over that I've ever seen the doors open on, to that platform that's right about in here. And I think that's because there's an emergency exit on that platform that leaves the terminal in this direction. And plus, there is access below these platforms down here. There's an access walkway for fire escapes and things like that. The lower level of the terminal is basically represented by this square rectangle right here. And these tracks are the stub end tracks that you see in the terminal today. This track right here is interesting. This is track 101 right here, but it intersects with track 100 right here. And if you walk behind the stairwell at track 101, there is a original New York Central MU car sitting back there on this track. It's one of only 4 that haven't been ever been scrapped. The last time I saw images from down there, though, that's just what I've heard, what I've read about. The last picture I saw down there was just a blue boxcar sitting down there with an air conditioner on the side of it, but I don't know how true that is, or if it's been moved to a museum recently, or if that's old information, whatnot. But all these tracks that went into the inner tunnel right here, I'm sorry, it's focusing on my pen. This whole inner tunnel and outer tunnel on the lower level doesn't seem to be used anymore. It might actually be walled off. I'm not too sure, because I've seen some videos of trains continuing down these tunnels in the past, but no Metro North trains, only other trains. And so since I can't access these tracks over here by hand, reaching across it, especially in HO scale, definitely not in anything larger than HO, you would never be able to reach this track from here. This would have to have access on both sides to be able to reach these tracks for any reason, really. You'd have to clean them, of course, but also just putting in, just doing scenery and it doesn't seem like a tunnel underground would need that much scenery, but these tracks are loaded with trash, cigarette butts, old coffee cups, beer cans, takeout food boxes and bags, and pens and pencils and old fires and graffiti and track maintenance stuff. And the track maintenance team that works down there, they have their own little shed and their own little staircases and access ways to every part of the station. And this actually is called a terminal. Most people argue Grand Central Terminal is called the terminal, not a station, but it's confusing because in the past it was called a station. Now it's called a terminal. And in fact, the passageways to this area over here say Grand Central Station on them, even today. Because back when they designed it, this part was a station, because as you can see, the tracks go beyond the platforms in both directions. And only this part over here was called a terminal. And to add even more confusion, back when this was opened up, these tracks all had 2 numbers instead of 3 numbers. So there's confusion about what number assigned to what track. Like, this was considered track 103, now it's track 100, and there's a 103A and a 102A over here. And the confusion just goes on and on, because the Grand Central Terminal, the operators of Grand Central Terminal, renumbered tracks over and over and over again. And I've seen images of both, of 3 number tracks and 2 number tracks, and tracks with letters and tracks with numbers. If you look at this end down here, where this is track 180, 185, and 186, and they're just storage tracks here. They're dead end storage tracks, but right below it you have track J, track F, track B, and track A, and they don't seem to go in any order because this is the lower level. Above it, in the throat, which is beyond this point, these tracks all go back uphill to meet the throat of the yard. There's a whole nother upper level of track that's looks just like this. So there's actually, in the current Grand Central Terminal, there's 3 levels. There's the Madison Avenue yard, there's the lower level, this one, and then there's the upper express level on top of this. And so with all the different track numbers and letters, and there's ladders that I haven't included in here because really I wanted to keep the yard simple. I don't want any double crossovers. I don't want any double slip switches. All those things in an area like this would be very complicated and encourage derailments. There's already going to be derailments in a plan this complicated. And this is, I really want it to run smoothly because the real thing has 700 trains coming in and out of it. I think a train on average leaves every 8 minutes from the terminal in real life. The other thing too, the other reason I didn't want to include so many tracks in here is because you would need, I don't know, like a team of 30 people to run just this part of the model railroad. And I would like to keep it simple. Just have trains come in, stop, go around the loop, down track 200, and go on back out through the Park Avenue Tunnel. Or vice versa, come around, loop this way, come into the stop, act like they're dropping off, picking up, whatever, and go right back out of the station again. Try to keep it very simple, but the main thing is to have this cutaway here so that you can look into the terminal in this direction. As far as height goes, I would prefer to make the model railroad short enough so that children and short people can see it. This would all be below the upper level. So this is just the lower level right here. This is just the lower level. The express level would be above this in the same footprint. And of course, these areas right here would just be black paint, really. And there is a part of the yard right here that I didn't include, that above it in this area would be the Lexington Avenue yard, or the Lex yard as it's called. And down here is where the switch tower is for this yard. In 1926, that's where the switch tower was. Nowadays, I believe it's in a place called the OCC on the 7th floor of the main terminal building. So, I'm Daniel Bridge, the Armchair Model Railroader, and thank you again for watching another episode of how I would model Grand Central Terminal.